Hi, so I just want to give you some buying tips on picking air vent mounts here. So I used to have one of these magnetic air vent mounts and flat out I would say, don't go with one of these. You might think you're saving money with, these being $2 to $4, but in reality, over time, these things don't last. I have these things, just come apart all the way, in the middle of a, car ride. And these particular ones are not all that much more expensive. This particular one was $7, $8 on Amazon. And I'll have links to both of these in the description area, but I really would discourage, buying these particular ones because not only do they not last, you could see that the gaps get wider, so they're very loose over time. And this particular one has a screw in the middle, which has the magnetic plate here. And what ends up happening is they twist apart or they fall apart because you're constantly moving your phone. Now, these things do not actually work well. It might work well initially, but the magnetic strength actually degrades over time. But also, if you buy a thicker case and you put the metal plate here, what ends up happening is as you're driving, it'll twist. So it'll twist off, or it'll just fall off, as you could see. A little speed bump or a little pothole or just bumpy roads will actually have it fall off if you have a thick case, which is what happened to me when I switch phones and switch cases. So stuff like that won't necessarily happen in one of these full body air vent mounts. Now, the thing to look for in these full body air vent mounts is that where you have your charger, just make sure there's a hole there. So you could see there's a hole in each one of these. So not all of these phones have the hole in the center. So for example, this particular one is off-centered, and once I put it on the mount, it's blocked from charging. The other thing to look for is to make sure it has 360 degrees points of articulation. Now, this particular one has a big back plate. So the other advantage of these big back plates is you can imagine when you have these vents mounted, these things mounted to the air vent, and the heat is coming out of the air vent. Now it starts blowing the hot air on the phone. At least this particular one has a big plate to disperse the hot air off of the battery. The last thing you want to do is overheat your battery. Whereas these things, it blows directly into the battery, especially when it's basically mounted flush to the air vent. It's very close to the air vent, whereas these things at least stick, 2 inches out from the air vent. So the hot air isn't blowing against, the battery itself. And this has a deflector plate that actually disperses the hot air. So this is another reason why I would discourage against buying one of these. These things are very tight, so you could see when I'm clamping it down, that gap closes as I just clamp it. So if I twist it here, you could see it's all clamped in there. And if I unclamp it, these things do have 360 degrees points of articulation. Almost all of them have this, so you could adjust it any direction, up, down, left, right, the way you want, and then simply tighten this. You make sure to get one that actually has a button in the center versus on the side, because what ends up happening is it's very easy to expand. So you might have children or your wife or husband that shares the car, and so all they have to do is push the back button, and this simply expands very smoothly. They could put a bigger phone, such as this big phone here that I have, and clamp it down, and these things still are so tight, they're very tight. Now if you simply share, you don't necessarily share a car, then these things do come out off and out pretty easily. You just slip it in and out, sort of like that. And once again, it clamps on so tight, it doesn't really fall off. Now the other thing to look for is this particular one has a rubber black backplate, so it gets dirty a lot. I would suggest just getting a plastic black backplate one. Now the Van Mass makes a plastic backplate, and that one is like $8.99. This particular one I got was $7.99 for MPOW here. And I will have both of these in the description area of the video, all of these things that I've talked about here. But I would say that's really it. Those are the tips. Simply that, don't bother getting one of these. Get one where you could actually position your recharger input in, and get a center button one that's in the center, not on the side. Get one that has a more or less a plastic backplate here. That's really it. I guess the other thing I want to mention is, because this thing rotates 360, you could see how it could do a vertical mount or a horizontal mount. Doesn't really matter. All right, I guess that's really it, and I hope this helps, and please subscribe, and thank you for watching.